Hello, listeners. Leadership Ignite Group coming at you with our famous Patrick Hardy, Mike Schmidt, and Clint Laney. Today, we're going to be talking about home inspection trends and parallels they run with possibly even the real estate industry. Home inspection industry going through a lot of similar metamorphosis as real estate, with inspectors teaming up much like real estate agents do. Okay, so we're going to be talking about the last couple of years, the trends, how they started in 2020, where they're moving to now, so everyone can stay up to date and maybe even take a role that your small business is in and follow it in a similar suit. Home inspection industry is currently undergoing big changes and trends. The rise of larger multifamily firms is gaining momentum in this industry. Traditionally, most home inspection companies were one-person operators serving a small market area. They've built up steadily, and a list of agents that regularly referred inspection work are now teaming up together and following suit. Clint, let's talk about for a second what you're seeing in your area. You also have a multi-inspector firm. Are you following this trend? Maybe teaming up and going after big properties together?
We do end up partnering with a couple of real estate agents, or I should say they use us exclusively. And the trends I think that we're seeing is we all know unit sales were down 15, 16, maybe even 17, 18% across the board. Part of that had to do with inflation. Part of that had to do with the interest rates and inventory. Inventory played a huge part for us. I think we see something a little different, something a little better, and don't feel those pressures because we live in a military community, right? We've got all four services there. So people are constantly moving, buying. So we see a lot more movement in our area than some other people might see. But yes, we do partner with some real estate companies and some realtors. And to be honest, we're hoping for the best in 2023.
That's fantastic. That's great. Like we all are, right? Patrick, This one's for you. I want to talk about there are several forces driving the growth of multi-inspector companies. Similar brokerages and teams, inspection companies are striving to be the one-stop shop for home inspection services. Many groups are offering an array of services to add on to their inspection. I know that you've most recently spoken about LiDAR. Can you elaborate on that?
So I think LiDAR is more of an emerging technology to keep your eye on in the future, especially when you get into higher end homes. It's an additional service that you could probably add on to. It comes typically LiDAR cameras range from anywhere from maybe $1,000 all the way up, $5,000 and onward. But iPhone 12 Pros, 13s, and 14s, they come integrated with it. And that gives you the advantage of scanning not just every room of the house and interconnecting it. And some, real estate agents do this, but we can also scan the outside of the house for, topographic differences like elevation changes where there might be water pooling. But you can also export a lot of that stuff into an AutoCAD image, which is very beneficial for, let's say, a high-end client that's probably going to want to move some stuff around. Now, is this the standard now? No, but I do think it's just like how thermal imaging about 10 years ago was an emerging technology. I think this has been around for a few years. I think it's an emerging technology. Keep your eye on it. I think this will slowly start to become a standard, kind of like how thermal imaging used to be an add-on service. And a lot of firms are really starting to pick this up as a way to reduce their liability. But I think LiDAR is just another tool in the toolbox to, keep your eye on. And it, is really dropping in cost, affordability, and usefulness. So
fantastic. Yeah, I like that. Sewer scopes, radon. Mold testing, that's something I'm researching in right now. I'm going to it. Like it's not a question form anymore. Like Bluegrass Home Inspections is going to be in mold testing here within the next 10 days. 10 days. Let's talk about times, right? We've witnessed the tightening of inventory in a lot of markets. We've seen deadlines, closing dates shorten. This has resulted in the inspection objection times going from a week or 10 days from the time contracts are signed down to a handful of days. To meet these short deadlines, a larger team of inspectors is needed to improve responsiveness. Where a scheduled one-person inspection company fills quickly, a larger team of inspectors can maintain 1 or 2 lead times. Have you guys seen this shortening times at all? Because I've seen it's very weird because I've seen
So
homes.
in the last couple of years, I would agree with you. But in the
Yeah.
last couple of months, and especially probably in the last 6 months, it's actually flipped as far as being a market of sellers, and now it's becoming a market of buyers. With interest rates going up, the pool of buyers has really dwindled, and people still need to sell their house, whether they're moving, from a different area, whatever, maybe a divorce, whatever. So they're with less and less buyers, that gives them more power to negotiate. And they can stipulate, hey, no, we're not going to settle for a 5-day inspection period. We want a 7 or a 10-day. So I have seen a return to that. And that's kind of nice to see, because it gives a lot of, I mean, honestly, that's how it should be. Nobody should be pressured in buying a property. That's a pretty big investment, and having a 0 inspection period, 0-day or 3-day inspection period, honestly is, I'm not going to say it's illegal or should be illegal, but I think it's unethical.
Sure.
I'd agree with that. Over the last, I'd say 6 months, we've seen a trend. Before COVID, before the market started shifting, we used to do a lot of PICRA inspections, and PICRA is property inspection contingency removal addendum, I believe that is. And that is where, after you perform your initial inspection, the buyer of the home and the real estate agent sit down, go over some of the deficiencies, and then make a request to the seller of the home to get these repaired. If the seller agrees, there's an addendum that gets typed up. This is our PICRA. All right. And prior to COVID, prior to the shift in the market, we were going back out to a home we had previously inspected and checked to make sure that all those repairs had been done correctly. Over the last 2 years, 2.5 years, we were basically doing away with that because the sellers had the power. Now, and I agree with what Patrick said, it's becoming more buyer friendly, if you will. We've been doing PICRA inspections and checking to make sure that everything's being done correctly. And that just tells us that the market is bouncing back more towards a buyer's perspective. The estimates that I'd mentioned earlier, right? And this goes with a bounce back. We were down 16, 17% last year. Overall, we're only forecasted to be down about 7%. Okay, so the home prices this year, from everything that I read, from everybody I talk to, seem to think we're about to level out or stay even. No up, no down, and they're hoping that the market stabilizes across the board. So we'll see what the next few months bring.
Yeah, absolutely. So the rise of teams and brokerages driven to provide complete solutions for home buyers to trigger changes in the role of home inspectors and how referrals will occur. Have you seen any changes in how you're getting a lot of your business, but to both you and Patrick, Clint? Have you guys seen any change in like how you have to market because the market has shifted over the last six months? Maybe.
Honestly, I think the best kind of marketing is kind of like a passive marketing. If you have to, I would have a good looking website, be locatable on Google, wear a uniform, have a professional business card, and do good business and treat people right. And I got to tell you, that has been more successful over time than Google ads versus flyers, which have never worked for me, or any of that stuff. It's just, shaking somebody's hand, treating people with respect, being confident, and being honest and upright. If you don't know something, be honest with that, but being objective and unbiased. I think that's what people really appreciate, and they'll call you for that all the time.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that, Patrick, because I know there are probably a lot of listeners out there thinking about, because I would even look at the Google ads myself. I wanted to grow as fast as I could. And I later learned that growing slow and the pace that I did was the right thing to do. Later learned that growing too fast, too big is a bad thing. Patrick, I think you and I talked about that. Mike, I want to ask you a question real quick. And just because I'm curious in your field, how do you advertise? I mean, you're talking to a great IT guy who knows the best in IC or SEO. So tell me, how do you get your name out there? What do you do?
Hey, thanks for asking, Dave. Yeah, I'd have to agree with Patrick. One thing that I've noticed when working with a lot of clients is trust. A lot of them, their eyes can glaze over if you start talking gibberish to them or start talking the language, vernacular that they don't have any interest in, or it's just over their head. So I think what Patrick said, just keep it a conversation where you hear what they're saying, you earn their trust, and then everything that comes after that is secondary. No matter if you're talking about needing to make major improvements, or if they're just wondering whether to do A or B on something small. I think that establishing trust is the most important thing, along with what Patrick said there. But I'm in marketing, so I'm going to say that Google ads and all that stuff are can be beneficial too. It just depends on what's going on. So if you maybe have an event coming up or something like that where you need that extra boost, sometimes doing a little advertising can always reach a few more people. But yeah.
All right,
So-
I'm gonna switch over to tools. Okay, I'm sorry, Patrick. Go ahead. What do you got?
I had a point to make because we started off this conversation with multi-inspector firms, and we kind of touched on something that is very important. If you're going to be a successful multi-inspector firm, I talk about this when I teach all the time. I call it the Big Mac effect. You have to have the Big Mac effect. One thing that McDonald's does incredibly well is their quality control. Their quality control, like a Big Mac, will always taste like a Big Mac, regardless of where you're going to go. It's going to be, decently priced. It's not going to be too expensive. So you know how much it's going to cost. It's not going to make you sick. You may regret eating it after a couple minutes later, but
Yeah.
you trust that, hey, it's going to satisfy your craving, right? Well, that's a multi-inspector firm. So if you're going to have more than one, if you're going to work with more than one inspector, you need to be wearing the same uniform. You need to be shaking everybody's hand. You need to be treating people the same way. Now, everybody can have their own personality, but you have to be Big Macs, essentially, a carbon copy of each other. Because if I go out of town and I have to pass off business to one of the other guys that work for me, people can be fearful of like, well, wait a minute, is he going to inspect? Is he going to treat my client the same way? So they need to have that trust that, hey, no, yeah, if it's Nils, Rob, or any of his guys, they are going to do a jam up job. And they're going to take care of the client and make us look great. You got to have that Big Mac effect. That's that trust that Mike was talking about.
Okay, so serious question, and I'm going to get into the depth now. Okay, this is something I've been weighing back and forth on. Okay, because I've talked to other multi-inspector firms. I'm on the fence, right? 23, my vision board right behind me says I'm going to have a multi-inspector firm in 23. And there's a thought in the back of my head about another multi-inspector owner, right, in Louisville, Kentucky, who pulled me aside one day and said, you'll make more money if you hold off. You make more money by yourself. And I do, but I want that 3-week excursion. I want to go on that 3 week.
So, well, he's partially correct.
But at the same, I want to move from small business to big business. I want that cash flow quadrant that Kiyosaki talks about. That's where I want to move. But
Yeah.
So to do this, because I analyzed this quite hard. The only reason I was successful as quickly as I was because I was working at the fire department at the same time. So I didn't really need the money that I was bringing in as a home inspector. So I could sacrifice my business to ensure that my guys that I hired had enough business. When you hire somebody, they become number one. They are now the primary inspector. and you need to take a step back to manage the company, and that may mean like, hey, during the slow times of year, you take a pay cut. And you need to be ready for that if that comes to be. If you properly prepare, maybe you don't have to do that. So because if you don't do that, they're going to see that and they're expendable. They're going to see that they're expendable and they're going to have one foot out the door. And it's exponentially more expensive to continuously hire people than hire the right person the first time and treat them well and give them ownership in the company and have them take pride. It doesn't have to be like stock options. It can be like, hey, company stock where they get some voting rights, hey, like, and they should. If they're working that hard in the company, you need to rely on their, their hey, yeah, I got a good idea. I think we should do this. Listen to them. They may have a good point because you're going 1,000,000 miles an hour and you may not see everything.
100%.
So what happens when you disagree, right? What happens when
we have a conversation and like
right.
And that's why I have at my company, I have somebody that's he is very cheap. He is my like kind of CFO. If there's any big purchase across the company, I have to go to him. And then he gets veto power over what I say and my COO guy says. Like he can outvote both of us, even if it's 2-1, because he's got the final say.
That'll go well with David.
No, but it's fine because I trust him.
I'm like,
hey, listen, you can cancel Christmas.
Can you
listen,
see that right now?
In a perfect world, right? That sounds good. All right. But at the end of the day, right, it's your company. If you feel that you want to invest in a LiDAR machine, right, then why wouldn't you? If you feel like you need to invest in, let's say, the mold kit, like David's about to do.
That's a great example. Because I remember years ago, we had maybe 1 or 2 thermal imaging cameras, and I had one of them, and my manager had the other. And I was on my 3rd inspection for the day. I got off a shift. I must have had like 2 hours of sleep, way too much coffee. And, I was at the inspection, and I could show you guys the report. And I just, something wasn't just adding up on this inspection. So I whipped out my thermal at a couple times in this inspection. And if I hadn't have done that, I would have incurred major liability. I would have missed easy things. It showed that the breaker was mismatched for the AC compressor. Like they replaced the AC, the compressor condenser outside. They increased the living square footage. They didn't insulate large portions of the attic that I couldn't even reach, but I could see it plain as day with the thermal. So I was like, I immediately the next day I called up my financial guy, like, working it. Hey man, I think we need to buy thermals for every single one of our guys. He's like, no way. That's like, a couple, $300-400 a pop. And, we got the money, but, I don't really see the need. I'm like, I'm going to send you a report. Gives me a call like 20 minutes later. He's like, dude, yeah. So we've standardized exactly when we pull this thing out to make sure that, because it's going to reduce not just our individual liability, but our company's liability. Whoever we hire is going to make sure that they don't miss anything major, like any water leaking or, missing insulation, which isn't catastrophic. It can cause some, but so I created a logical argument to him. I brought it to the evidence, and it was compelling enough for him to agree. Yeah, we need to pull the trigger on this. If I did that with LiDAR right now, he wouldn't see the need. But if we got in bed with a whole bunch of big clientele that you could see, wow, man, that's going to bring us like the big fish, and we could see the return on investment fairly quickly. We did the same thing with, we sent him and another one of our guys to become insurance adjusters. They weren't busy in the wintertime anyway. It's like, hey, listen, let's send you guys to school just in case if we have to do this because, hey, the, market turns down, you guys can start doing this and kind of fill in. It's just sometimes you got to weigh out the odds, and he kind of brought that to my attention. I was like, that's a great idea. Yeah, let's look at that. Let's pursue it.
So real quick, does your insurance, does that cover if you were to miss something major? And if so, why wouldn't they reward you having the most advanced tools to capture these kinds of things?
Yeah, it actually reduces your liability. It can't increase it. The only time you can be conclusive, with thermal imaging, you're seeing a wavelength of light that you normally can't see, infrared spectrum,
Right.
like Predator, right? So you can't really be decisive on anything. It's all possible. The only time you can be absolute with it is in electrical systems. If something's overheating, you're not going to touch it to see if it's hot. It's hot, and it shouldn't be hot. But with moisture, you're seeing the effect of it. That clues you in, hey, I need to get my moisture meter and put it on that, which a moisture meter can be deceived as well. But if I had both of those together, the likelihood of both of them being wrong is not there. Moisture meters are just a very expensive multimeter. They test conductivity. There are 2 electrodes on it. So if you touch it to anything metal, it'll read moist, even though it's not moist. But
Yeah. And Mike, we carry a couple of forms of insurance. We carry general liability, right? And general liability covers anything that happens at the time of inspection. Any accident, right? Somebody uses one of your tools, gets injured, right? That's why we carry general liability. And then we carry what's called errors and omissions. All right. And errors and omissions is insurance just for you supposedly missing something at the inspection. Okay. And that varies in rate, but there are 2 different types of insurances that cover, all right, that cover your back, basically.
Yeah, I'm seeing something too called umbrella insurance. Is that, I guess that would be everything. And then professional liability, another one.
Professional liability, E&O, it's kind of like malpractice insurance for doctors. Hey, it done screwed up.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Correct.
So it's just different types. It's not you have one or the other.
No.
Multiples. You have general liability, like you said, and then you have the
Yep.
errors and omissions. Okay.
Right.
So how would that not make sense financially if the insurance companies are going to wouldn't they give you a break if you?
Well, they're not going to really care. They're not going to want to give you a break if they don't have to. But here's the thing. If let's say I'm a defense lawyer, my client's being sued by XYZ, former client of my client, my client's the home inspector. My home inspector's got a great report. He's using thermal imaging and all this other stuff. He's got everything well documented. And my client's saying that he missed something, right? Well, one of the first things I'm going to do is subpoena to get a whole bunch of other home inspectors' reports from the surrounding area. I'm going to redact all the personal information and the addresses, but I'm going to look at what tools and equipment they're using, along with how are they reporting. If my client is inspecting at a higher level, that reduces his liability. As long as he's not talking out of his butt and he's only saying truthful things and he's interpreting the data the correct way, that's a very good argument. Well, my client did everything he could to detect anything on site of, that guy's property.
Okay.
And he documented what he could, but he's not going to rip up the carpet. He advised that, so I don't see the argument here. It won't even go to court because of that. The judge will look over the files. He's like, yeah, this guy, man, this is a fantastic report. Everything's well worded. He's using thermal imaging. This isn't seen in the home inspection world. He tried to do his best.
So
and the difference here is the balance, I think, right? Just to bring a little balance to this, we have our standards, right? And by our standards, we perform limited visual examinations. All right. Nothing that we do is intrusive or inclusive. All right. We perform limited visual examinations. All right. I think where some home inspectors sometimes get in trouble is they try to use or do too much, not knowing exactly how to use that tool.
Correct.
So you end up overstepping, saying something that you believe is right, even though, right? And you're going to find that a lot of lawyers will ask you to stay within that standard. All right. If the standard says that we're not going to run the air conditioning unit if it's below 60 degrees, okay, but you decide because, the air condition this day today was close to 60, the real estate agent or the client wanted it tested, you decide to test it. If you end up breaking something, right, that is 100% on you, right? Because the standard says that we don't do certain things, right, during certain periods of time.
It's funny because I got caught with that today. There was a clock, about a $7 clock, very cheap, you know, analog clock that was hanging right on the side of the electrical panel, sub panel of the garage. Like, I picked it up, I put it
Right.
down, I took it off, panel cover off, I put the panel cover back on, and I'm sitting there, putting it on. I got it going. And then my client walks through the door right beside it, slams the door, the clock falls down and breaks. And I'm like,
Oh, no.
so I picked it up. I went inside, told the buyer's agent, hey, listen, I'm sorry. This cheap clock was sitting on the wall in front of, and I told her, and she's like, oh, yeah, that's not a big problem. I'll let them know. I'm like, if they want to take it out of my fees, just let me know. Just be honest. The biggest thing is, the easiest way to stay out of liability is be honest and don't say anything that you're not for certain. And if it's a possibility, say that. It's okay. Like, hey, listen, that's a possibility. This is what I'm seeing. You need to follow up with XYZ, whoever, to ensure that it's, whatever, and that's your job. You're going to have limitations in doing whatever you do. I don't know everything. I come across stuff all the time. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take a picture, do some research, do the best I can, but then I'm going to try to refer them to whoever might be able to answer their question.
Mhm.
Agreed. Agreed. David, do you run into stuff like that?
Yes. And listen, the number of times that I've thanked the Lord for my timing being just impeccable, right? I'm incredibly lucky. I've got good timing. I've been, just some incredible
Are you
things.
trying to make fun of me about the clock?
Right? No pun intended. No pun
Pun.
intended, Patrick.
Nice. But one thing I tell you, I want to get onto tools real quick because there is something that I have got to order, and it, other than the mold test kits, okay, fall protection. I was on a hailstorm inspection, and the adjusters showed up at the same time. Well, after I was already on the roof. They showed up after me. Man, they've got some of the coolest tools, right? They get out, they walk around for a minute, they get out this long adjustable in length rod. It has a roller on the backside of it so it can roll up the shingles, and then it's got a big shepherd's hook with a grip on the backside, so it hooks over top.
Just get yourself a Mavic Mini 2 or a Mavic Mini 3. You're fine. Just get a drone. Get a Mavic Mini 2 or Mavic Mini 3.
I guess that's an option as well. But
I'm telling you, because fall protection, one, you got to find an anchor if there's an anchor on the roof. A lot of areas, they don't mandate an anchor stay on the roof after the installation. So you could be searching for the anchor. You could have been on and off that roof while you find it. And I've installed a couple of roofs with fall protection, and I got to tell you, yeah, it's kind of nice having it, but it's a pain in the butt, and it almost causes them more falls with it than it does without it. Now, granted, if I do fall, I got it, but you're tripping over the damn line half the time. So I would just
harness. This isn't a harness with rope and tie.
Okay.
This is something that just portable, non-intrusive. It literally is like a huge shepherd's hook that's got an adjustable length, right? It goes up the roof, and then you flip it over, and it hooks over the ridge, right? And it's got all these handles up it. I mean, we're talking about 8, 12 or greater is what I would call
that's
it.
The fire department has those. I mean, we are the fire department, but yeah, it's kind of like a bandolier ladder. But,
I need to get one because the right now it's been consecutive about once a week of the past 2 or 3 weeks. Like there's that one roof doesn't look that bad. I find my valley. I go up on the valley, but man, getting down is different. Everybody
honestly,
knows.
I'll have to show you guys a report of
I gotta order it tonight. Yeah.
So
as you get older, yeah.
Try the drone.
So that's on the
I'm
list.
telling you, I didn't think the drone could do just as good a job, but at a lot of situations, I can do a better job with a drone. And let me tell you, I'm eating, crow here, because years ago I would have said no way. But with the drones nowadays, with the drone stabilization and the quality of the cameras, and you can get a decent drone setup for like $400.
Yeah.
And if you inform your workers' comp, if you have to carry workers' comp, that you're not getting on a ladder, your workers' comp will get cut in half easily. Workers' comp, like for instance, roofers, if you pay a roofer and if you have a roofing company and you pay workers' comp for your workers, which you should be doing, for every dollar you pay them, you have to spend 70 cents to workers' comp. So 70% of pay goes to workers' comp. It's very similar in home inspection if you have to carry workers' comp.
That's amazing.
Whew.
Oh my gosh.
I gave
I-
drone inspection a couple of training things to local building inspectors for the building department because it drastically reduced their workers' comp insurance by not having to get up on a ladder and on the roof.
How about that?
Like Clint said, like I'm 41. I'm about to be 42. I mean, I've fallen off a roof. I don't want to do it again. And it's hot in Florida on a roof. And honestly, the more I do it, the more I don't see a reason to do it. It's more of like an ego thing. Oh, I have to get up on the roof. There's very few circumstances where I find myself in where I may have missed something because I didn't get up on a roof, but there's a lot of roofs you just can't get on because it's terracotta tile, concrete tile, steep pitch, multi-story. And, if you can't get on the roof, the next best thing is a drone, and they're not that expensive.
No, they're not. They're not. You do have to get licensed, right? You do have to get your license. You do have to pass a test.
You
to make
don't have
sure
to
that
be
you-
licensed to fly the Mavic Mini. You just have to register the drone.
Right? So in different states, like in Virginia, right, you have to pass the class and take the test, right, and have a license if you're going to use it for anything commercial.
Do the
That's
clients-
unusual because I know the federal guidelines, you're right, except for the license. You just have to register the
Yeah.
drone if you're using it commercially.
Do
Yeah.
the
Go ahead, Mike.
do the customers respect a drone perspective as much as you getting up on the roof?
Oh my God. They love it.
Really? Okay.
It's like, like candy, like you whipping out the thermal imaging camera. They're like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Right.
And
But you're not
yeah.
up there like looking under the shingles and stuff. So I didn't know if they were like,
No,
what is this?
It's
You know?
surprising. Like I can see a lot of aggregate loss, like the granular loss, exposed fiberglass on the edges. I've done a lot of insurance inspections. I used to get calls all the time. The subject matter expert to go out to say that it's not hail damage when the roofing company said it was hail damage. And I'm sitting there inspecting 8 houses in a neighborhood, and I can do it all with a drone. But the nice thing is with the Mavic Mini, and I've had this conversation with FAA guys, yeah, you're supposed to be licensed, you're supposed to be registered. I asked them straight up, I'm like, I'm not saying I'm not going to be, but would anybody ever come bother you if you're on private property, you didn't fly it out of sight and you weren't flying it off that property and you had permission from the property owner? They're like, no, nobody's ever going to bother you. It's only for when you're doing something stupid.
Yeah.
You're doing something you shouldn't be doing. And I'm not saying I wouldn't get licensed or registered, but it's like, just like everything else, don't do anything dumb. Just operate it the way you should be operating it. It's not a, hey, I'm going to, race it around the neighborhood thing. No peeping Toms, even, when you're doing it
That'd be
legally, a 80 foot cap and all that. Just don't do it. Just be good.
And I think the
all right?
problem, right, is the FARs were passed, new FARs, federal aviation regulations were passed in 2020. And it's not for people doing stuff that's crazy. Is if something were to happen and you crash that drone, right, or it somehow got away from you, you hit something else, right? And really, if there was an accident with the drone, right, obviously 99% of the time,
Yeah.
most people be like, oh yeah, it was a mistake, here you go. But if they decided to sue you because you were using it in a commercial aspect and you don't have a license.
Oh no, that's what I'm
That's-
saying.
that-
Like, absolutely
yeah,
get
that's where it can
licensed, get
become an issue.
registered. I'm just saying, because that legislation that came out and it was international. There was an international board that came out and they wanted to, base everything off of weight limits. Like, okay, what weight are we going to require this? And what weight are we going to require that? And the minimum weight requirement is 250 grams. Well, shortly there, if anything, if you fly anything under 250 grams, it's considered a toy. And you didn't need to be licensed or register it. And the caveat was if you fly a drone lighter than that, and that came out later after 220, I think later in 2021, they're like, okay, well, if you're flying something below 250 for commercial, and they kind of like, and this is coming from a FAA guy in my class, like, please have it registered. Like it was kind of semi, but it was, they considered it a toy. And because like, honestly, when you look at it, and Mavic Mini made this thing within a month after they came out with that, and they right on the side of it says 249 grams.
Okay.
And it doesn't have obstacle avoidance on it like the first two versions, because that would have put it over the weight limit. So they were very particular in designing a drone to allow somebody to have the most amount of capability without having to increase your administrative workload, like make it like a pain in the butt to actually fly it. But yeah, absolutely. And every state is going to be different, as far as where you can fly it, and registration is, if you need it registered or licensed to do whatever. I know, like in Maryland, for instance, there's very few places you can freaking fly it, because you got DC right next to it, and you got an airport and Baltimore City, and they're very restrictive. But the great thing about DJI is they have geofencing, and it will not let you fly it where you're not supposed to, which is great. And that's altitude specific too.
Okay.
Is it,
Jump
you said that was
on,
a
David.
Well, I honestly would like to
Hit the
go
drone.
ahead and sum this up so we keep our listeners going. I've got a lot of big things to go through in 23, and I know things are moving very fast, because from 23 to 26, more than one source out there has stated that home inspectors are going to grow 10%. The number of home inspectors are going to grow 10% between 23 and the year 2026. So that's what I'm looking at. I do want to become a multi-inspector firm. I think the nerves that I may have or anxiety, I am just preparing myself and getting ready, because it's got to happen, right? It's got to happen. I mean,
It's got to happen.
And this group right here of all Leadership Ignite group, that's what we do. We get you ready. We send you out there. We help you learn everything you need to and prepare you so you don't have these nerves and anxiety. So that's what we're looking at too. And Mike, I think you're going to be expanding in the next 3 years as well. I can see it. So
Listen, I talked to Mike the other day. Mike said he wants to become a home inspector as well. He said he'd come to one of our classes.
anybody?
Mike's going to become a home inspector here shortly.
Yeah, my guy, Mike.
Mike,
Hey,
the only thing is you might have to get up before noon.
oh my God.
He'll be in the after hours. He'll be the late shift. He'll
He'll
come
be
in
the late shift.
Oh my
A
God.
schedule that fits everybody, Clint. Yeah.
I'm gonna start calling you guys up for a podcast at 3 a.m. and just, hey, where are you guys at? Come on, get to work.
You're like, let's go.
I got, let's go. This is my schedule. Come on, guys.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God.
I was up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Where are you guys?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
I know. Look at you. You're doing both
Yeah.
of the shifts, or all the shifts.
Yeah.
Okay. Mike Schmidt, Patrick Hardy, Clint Laney. Thanks everybody. Good talk. We know where we're at. We know where we've been, and we know where we're going. So Leadership Ignite Group signing out. Thanks, listeners.